So today we are going to welcome Perry McLeod-Shabogesic with us to speak about traditional roles and responsibilities of men. Perry is of the Crane clan and is an Ojibwe Anishinaabe from Nipissing First Nation. He's been an artist, cartoonist, a writer, traditional helper, medicine harvester, and cultural resource person in and around his community for many years. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Perry, I'll invite you to start sharing your screen, and welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Bonjour. Anzo Kadijnika, Shage Dodem, Bising Donjaba, and Shnabe and Dao. My name, excuse me, is Anzo Ked, which means the one who tells stories. I am from Nipissing, from the Crane clan, as was mentioned. And yeah, I'm a Shkabewis, like many of us are. In fact, we all are. In some form, in some way, we are all helpers. We learn things, we experience things, and we pass on that knowledge, those experiences to those coming, up beside us or behind us. And so we all do that. We help them, no matter what kind of role we are or job we are. That's part of our original instructions that comes from being a human being, a good human being, is we are all helpers. We are helped and we help others. I want to let you know I'm coming from my community in Nipissing, the place of my ancestors, where my blood DNA flows through the land here, through the water. It is in this space that my people have lived, like yours, in the places you are from. And so that's important. That's an important part of who each of us are. And when we are given that connection, there are responsibilities, roles and responsibilities that come with that. That's my understanding. And the things I'm going to share with you today are just my understandings of things. Your teachings might be different, or you may even completely disagree with some of the things that I understand. And that's okay, because we all come to our own truth on our own path in our own ways. But I'll share you, I'm here today to share mine. A little bit of my path and my understanding. Now, one of the things that happens with our communities, the way we see the roles of the male and the female, is that there are instructions that come with those as well. Instructions of responsibility. In our territory, for our men, we are responsible for fire. And for our women, they are responsible for water. And what is beautiful and unique about that relationship is that when it comes to life, the creation of life, you need the male and you need the female in most cases. And, in that, men bring that fire of life and women carry that fire of life within their water to bring life into the world, to carry that life for 9 months and then to be that doorway of life. And in that relationship, those gifts that we are given, we either use them in a good way or we do not. And it's important for us to know what some of those are, what some of those roles and responsibilities are towards that. That teaching of fire, that responsibility of fire for men when it comes to life-giving, and the women's responsibility for water are two crucial understandings that both male and female should understand. Because that gift of life-giving is the most powerful gift any being in creation can be given. The gift of life-giving. It's a little bit of Creator. Creator is the one who gifts us with life, but he hands that over to us, passes that to us, so that we can be a vessel for life. We can be the ones to help bring life into the physical realm when we are given those gifts. And when it comes to that gift of life-giving, sometimes we call that sexuality. There's other terms we use. But that gift can be the most beautiful gift that you can share with your partner. But it can also be the most deadly weapon that you can use against another human being. Because it's so powerful, it can really show the love you have, or it can be devastatingly damaging on a human being if it's not used in the right way. And I'm talking about, rape and incest and things like that are used against each other. And mostly men who are the ones who do that. There are some women who, but it's mostly men who are the ones who use that as a weapon. So for a man, it's important for us to understand that gift and what it's meant for, and to really use those gifts, those and other gifts that we are given, in that good way, to be a good man, and to teach that to our young men who are coming up. Now, to understand those roles, of even our own roles, we also have to have some understanding of the other roles that exist, are the roles of our women, roles of our children, our elders, and so we're going to touch a bit on that today as well. If you have a question, and you'd like to ask it while I'm talking, just raise your hand. I'll pause, and maybe Jessica can field the question, whether it's on the chat, or someone would like to pose a question verbally. You're more than welcome to do that anyway. Now, these gifts that I mentioned, the gift of fire and responsibility to it, and the gift of water and responsibility to that, have come to us way before even we were present. So that in what we call our creation story. Some of you may have heard a creation story or a number of different creation stories, and it's important that we look at those creation stories, because our particular worldview is in that story. How we see the world, how we see creation, how we see ourselves in and where we fit in creation is in that story, is in that creation story. Now, most times when you tell this story, and I have one of my teachers, Jim Dumont, who is responsible to carry this story and share it. When he tells it, he takes like 3 days to do it. I'm going to try to cram some of this in, within the hour, which is a challenge in itself. But I think I can hit the highlights, the main points, to begin to give you that understanding, and to see where our roles and responsibilities have come from. So in looking at our creation story, we understand, again, that our collective roles as well as our individual roles all come from this. And they're clear in a way in that story. When you read the story, you see and you can visualize what the story is speaking to you about. And every nation has its own story, its own creation story. In fact, some have many creation stories. And you look across the world and there's creation stories all over. And one of the things I asked one of my teachers when I was trying to find myself and understand where I fit as a man, as a person, as a human being, was, these creation stories. There are so many. I told my teacher, and I said, why are there so many, and which one is the right one? They're almost like competing, so which one's the right one? And all my teacher told me was that they are all right. And I looked at kind of puzzled, and I said, what do you mean? And he said, it's not the story, it's what's in the story. The teachings, the understandings, the gifts, those things that the story is showing you. And I began to realize how some of us take these stories literal, and we need to sort of delve into those stories more in a deeper level than just the superficial words of a story. That's important because it's the vehicle that carries those teachings. But we need to look at, what is it saying? What is that story telling me? And so I'm going to try to do that in a small way and talk about how that fits into our roles and responsibilities as human beings, but also, of course, as men. So our creation story speaks to how we came to be here on Turtle Island. And we look at the world as, and our mother, as containing spirits. There are some animate and inanimate, which means with spirit and without spirit. But most things in the natural world, if not all, we believe have spirit, like a rock, a tree, an animal, a human being, an eagle feather, an eagle wing, like what I'm holding here today. They have spirit. They have purpose. They have a road to travel on, a journey. The other thing that might differ from other paths is that we do not worship our Creator, and that is that we, or fear. That is, we have a great, deep respect for creation, for that great spirit that flows through all living things. And we pay a special thanks to be here, to be given the opportunity to live our lives, to be given the gifts that we are given, to given that life that we can make decisions on where it goes in our journey. So we give thanks for that and all the gifts that come to us. And spirituality is not just a day, it's every moment of every day that we be in that we should be in that presence of creation and the spirit of creation being all around us. But there are certain times that we do ceremonies, certain seasons, and our women do the full moon ceremony. That's their ceremony they conduct, and we help as men. And then for men, it's the sunrise ceremony that we do just before the sun comes up. We light our fire, and our fire meets that of our grandfather, the sun. And it's a celebration of that fire that men have been given responsibility. And so we look to our grandfather for that. Our women have that full moon ceremony. They look to the grandmother, the moon, as where they get their direction and understanding and teachings for the water. So again, you see that connections between the male and the female. So the creation story is best told in fires or chapters. First fire, that first chapter, that beginning of the beginning. When Gejemnado sat in the darkness of nothingness, there was nothing in creation just yet. And in a moment, something came to him, a vision, a flash, a thought. And that vision was everything that has happened before us, everything we see and experience today, and everything that will be. And that thought, excuse me, that vision came to Gejemnado in an instant, in a flash. I use the analogy sometimes of, when a character in a cartoon, when it gets an idea, what pops over their head? It's a light bulb flashes, that thought. Science calls that thought, that light that came, that flash, or the beginning of creation, they call that the Big Bang. And that was that great explosion that happened in the universe that created things, began to create things. And as it expanded, and it's still expanding today, there are more stars and planets and things being created. So that vision is still happening. That vision that Creator had on what everything would be and look like is still continuing. Not only that expansion, but everything that is evolved from that first time, from that first moment of the flash to now. Even today we call it evolution. Animals changing, the world is changing, all these shifts and things that are happening. That means there is spirit there. That means that's part of that vision of what Gejemnado had. Part of that first thought. It's growing, it has spirit, it continues. So that was the first thought. First fire. So Gejemnado was made aware that creation was to take place by that vision that came to him. It's a creation scroll, copy of a creation scroll. So we did have written documents, if you can call them that, that recorded these teachings. Second fire of creation was light. So you have the flash, it's like you're in a dark room. The light flashes, and then the lights turn on, and the room is lit. So for us, creation began to light up from that light, because from that first thought, the creation of the stars, our sun, our grandfather, lit up all of the universe, began to see those stars all over, began to bring light to that creation, that space of creation. So our grandfather, the sun, was born at that time. The third fire of creation was twinness, balance, duality, reciprocity, all these things that we do to make sure the physical world has balance. Because when the physical world was being created, in order for it to exist, it needed balance. Fire, water, night, day, up, down, all these things that exist in the physical world needed to be part of the physical world for it to remain and to grow. Our grandmother, the moon, was created to maintain the balance on the earth, on our mother, the earth. So she was given that responsibility, which includes the concept of twinness, two spirit, male, female, fire, water, I mentioned, night and day, etc. That balance that is required in the physical world, in the world that we live in. And you see when things go out of balance, how they begin to topple, or animals that are over harvested, plants, they go extinct because the balance is tipped too far. We see the balance of the earth right now with climate change, where we are doing things to interrupt that balance. And so hopefully we can find a way to maintain the balance, to bring it back. But we will see the results of that over the next few years as the world flips back and forth. And you see that climate shifting from cold to hot, and from fires to floods. And, it is that balance that is tipping back and forth. So hopefully we can catch that, but it takes each of us to do that work, to make sure, even in our own lives, that we promote balance. We make sure our footprint on our mother is less and less, that we use less fuel, that we try to maintain more of a healthy lifestyle, not just our own, but how we live and how we walk on our mother. Fourth fire of creation, 4 directions, time and space. So again, in the physical world, what we need to exist is time and space. When we are born, we come through that eastern door. That's our teachings. We come through the eastern door. Our spirit is given a vessel to walk with. Our consciousness is also part of our vessel, but only meets our spirit as we come into this world as children, as babies. Prior to us coming through, our spirit has sat with Geshem, the Creator. These are our teachings. And we have looked at our life. We've looked at our life before we enter, and we negotiate some of that with the Creator before we come in. We look at our 4 hills, our infancy, our youth, adult, elder. And we see the things that are placed on our path. We see the things that are on those parts of our life where the hill comes up, but we don't see what happens when they go down. But we see that it comes back up again. So no matter what is in those valleys, we see that our life will make it through if we stick to it, if we go through it. And so we look at that life, and in the end, we agree, and we are born and come into this world. And then we travel with our consciousness, who has no idea what our spirit has agreed to. And some days something will be happening, and we'll go, geez, I didn't ask for this, but you did. Well, you may not have asked for it, but you agreed you would go through whatever was on your life, and you would make it through. You would walk through it, and you would go through those hills in your life. Somehow you would find a way. I see a hand up. Yes.
We do have a question here from Michelle about whether, she says, is disease that causes death a part of that balance, of the world balancing itself?
It is, there are, well, this is my belief that when you look at the balances that have been put in place, we call those natural laws, those things we're supposed to do to follow the natural ebbs and flows of creation so we don't hinder it. But when you begin to cause those fluctuations and cause those things, there are safety measures in place that creation has. For instance, I look at, when our populations as human beings, like any population of any species, gets too big, there are things that automatically begin to happen. Disease comes back through to thin the herd, so to speak, so that the population is brought back to a healthy level. And that happens with every species, no matter if it's plant, animal, that there are these tipping points that happen and these other things kick in. You look at, for instance, with climate change, the melting of the glaciers, then that causes the water to rise. It causes the waters to warm. And when you warm the waters, it changes the climate, changes the temperatures. And when you change the temperatures, then it changes the weather. Places that are dry become more dry. Fire becomes more prominent in those areas. So all these things happen, including disease. There are certain things happening in the north where the permafrost is now melting and thawing, and it's releasing certain things. They say that can cause other diseases. I look at even COVID or these great diseases that have happened throughout our history. They've come about, I believe, because of our neglect of our way we live as human beings, and because we are just swarming over our mother. We are in the billions, and so we are taking over and pushing out other natural parts of creation. And when that happens, there's things that are going to happen to help correct it. And so I believe that, yes, there are reasons why we have different diseases. It keeps our populations in check. If everybody was healthy and lived forever, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Now, it's not to say that we don't, as human beings, we don't strive to be alive, because those are part of our instructions too. But it's about balance. It's about balancing our lives and what we do with that, in that instruction of we are to stay alive, and we raise our kids, and we teach them well to live well. This issue is not an issue for our people when we lived on Turtle Island by ourselves. We naturally went with the flows of creation. Disease was not an issue because we maintained our populations. We maintained ourselves and our footprint on creation. We lived with creation, not against it. But today, half our life is living against creation, doing things that go against those natural laws. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. So I'm kind of getting a long-winded answer, but I believe, yes, that's all part of it. It's all part of the correction of bringing things back to a balance, from my understanding. We good? So the physical world cannot live without that time and space. In a physical world, we need that to exist. The fifth fire of creation is our mother, the earth. Creator needed a place to send his thoughts and what he envisioned for us, and he chose to create our mother, the earth. So he did. He began to mold her out of other parts of creation from that first thought, that expansion, that the Big Bang, particles and things began to collect. He molded her, put water on her, got her dressed, but he hadn't given her life just yet. He was getting her ready. And he created, the grandmother moon was created to assist her, to watch her, to watch over our mother. And the water was placed on our mother, but life wasn't placed in there just yet. And as our women carry that same kind of water, that life water, where life can grow, where life comes from. And so our mother was our first, for our women, for our kwewak, we're the first role model for our women. The sixth fire was life itself. So after the earth was all ready, our mother was dressed and ready, her water was set, everything was set. And Gejemnado, they say, with a small portion of his breath, blew life with a mika shell into her water, sending that fire of life into her. And that life began that in her water, in those great oceans and waters in our history, when you look back, and that those things grew from that water and crawled onto the land, became the animals, the walkers, the crawlers, the swimmers, flyers, a lot of them that we see today, and that they're still evolving, they're still changing. Those animals, again, we call that evolution. The seventh fire of creation. Anyone guess what the seventh was? I don't see any hands up. The seventh fire is us, the human beings. What's our time? Just curious here.
It's 1:30.
Okay. There's another little story that goes with the seventh fire. And they say that we are in the seventh fire, but we're actually moving to the eighth fire. The eighth fire is whether we've learned enough to continue to exist, or we haven't learned enough, and life will cease to exist on our mother. It's our choice. We've been given a choice, and the eighth fire is our choice. But they say the seventh fire was when we were lowered here to the earth. There are stories that we are children of the stars, that we came from the stars. And there was a time that we were lowered to our mother. After everything was made, everything was perfect on the earth, on our mother. The animals, the plants, the water, everything was pure and everything was good. And we were lowered here. And they say there was 4 children that were lowered here, one at a time. First child was that yellow child, that East Asian child. And that child was lowered down, and Gejemnado took that yellow child and said, before you go on your mother, and he wanted to take off and play and run and explore. And he said, no, before you go, I need to give you your bundle. I need to give you your language, or your science, your society, your ceremonies, all those things. I need to give you that before you go, so you can find who you are. And that little child just wanted to leave, but no, Gejemnado kept him there to give him those things. When he was finished, he said, okay, now go find your place on your mother. And away he went. Next child was that black child. Same thing, the little black child wanted to get going, wanted to run and play and look around. He said, no, I have to give you your bundle, your language, your wisdom, your medicine, all those things you will need to be who you are. When he was finished, that little black child took off. And he said, go find your place on your mother. You too. You do that, as he was running away. Next child was that little white child. And again, that little white child, more than the other 2, wanted to go around and look around and explore. I want to go to the moon. I want to go to the bottom of that ocean. I want to go to the top of that mountain. I want to go to the faraway stars. That gift of travel, curiosity, movement. But Gejemnado said, no, you need to wait. I need to give you what you need to be the people who you are, your language, your science, your beliefs, your spirituality, all those things. After he was finished, that little white child took off. He's gone. Go find yourself and your mother, as he's running away. Last child was that little indigenous child, little brown child, little red child. But this little red child came down very shy, quiet, stayed close to Gajem Nado, didn't take off right away. So Gajem Nado passed him his language, teachings, spirituality, medicine, all those things that they would need. Finally, when he was finished giving him his first bundle, he told that little one, okay, it's time for you to go. You need to go. Wasn't running away like the other ones. So he sent that child out. That child comes back. No, I want to stay with you. He said, no, you have to go. 4 times. 4 times he sent that little red child out and he came back every time, didn't want to go. So Gajem Nado says, okay, I need you to go. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a special gift and a job. Because little ones, they like when you give them jobs. So he said, the job I'm going to give you is to take care of this place. To take care of your brothers and sisters who went on before you. Those are the colors of your family. That is your job, to do that. The little child smiled. And he said, in the gift, the magic gift I'm going to give you, it's magic, is this samo, tobacco. Whenever you need me, not want me, but need me, you offer that samo, you put it out, and I will come to you. When you need something, not want it, but need it, you ask for it, you use that tobacco, and I will get it to you somehow. This is what I want you to do. And that little brown child, that little red child, stepped away, but didn't go too far from Gajem Nado. Stayed close. This is why for us, being close to our mother, being close to the Creator is important for a lot of us. It's why, when something happens, we want to go and block a road. There's harm coming to our mother, to our land, our relatives of creation, our family of creation. We step up. We don't know why. Sometimes we just have this desire. And that responsibility to use that tobacco is something we were given and we continue to do today. When we want something from someone, we offer that samo. It's our custom for Anishinaabe, and some other tribes also do that. But some others have other ways of doing that. But that is our way, and why we do it. I understand why we do it that way. So that gift of tobacco was given to us. And the responsibility to our mother and to our brothers and sisters, our human family, as well as our creation family. Is there any questions or anything? Well, before we move on to the next part.
It's quiet right now. Someone did just ask for a repeat of number 1 and number 2 of the first 2 fires.
That was thought, the first thought, when the first vision came to Gajem Nado, and the second fire was when after that thought came and the Big Bang happened, and then all the universe opened up, the stars, and our grandfather's son was born. It lit up creation. That was the first and second fire. There's a lot more to those, much more. But that's what I'm giving you today. Otherwise, we'd have a very long Zoom. We'd have a Zoom. So original instructions. Everything in creation were given instructions. And what I mean by that is that things were given their instructions on how to be. For instance, many of our animals, we call it instincts. Certain animals will act a particular way pretty much all the time. They instinctively, and that's where they get that, instincts, they instinctively react in a particular way. And their behavior is very similar amongst all of that species. You see beavers building dams, living in ponds, eating particular food, plants, behaving in a particular way, all the beavers, even though they're all different, and there are some differences in their character, but they generally do a lot of the same things. That's part of their instruction, to be that way. Every animal, every plant, Every part of creation, it behaves in a particular way, and those are what we call original instructions. They came from creation, from the creation story, when they were created. In order to exist, they were given those instructions so there wouldn't be chaos and things, wolves all doing different things, and deer doing different things, and moose doing different things. The only ones who do different things are humans. Because in our instructions, one of the things we were given, which goes against our instructions, even though we know there's instructions to take care of this place, is we were given the gift of choice, of deciding whether we want to do something or not. And so that gift has worked against us at times. When you look back at human history, for instance, and the science, and looking at splitting an atom as an example in science, there was thought about using that to create energy, to heat up homes, and have this natural way of tapping into the gifts of creation to bring energy to the world. Well, then we took it and we made bombs. We made things that could destroy the earth 100, 200 times over again. And that was because we had the gift of choice. So we haven't always made the best decisions with that. We still struggle with that back and forth, trying to manage those choices we've made, trying to find ways back to doing things in a good way. So we were all given those instructions collectively and individually. And the fire of twinness between the male and the female is a balance in our families that is really needed. And how we as male and female human beings walk on our mother, walk on the earth in creation, and especially with each other. Now, when we look at the roles in our communities, and they may differ, at least the vision may differ place to place, tribe to tribe, nation to nation. For us, our elders are the ones who guide us. Their lived history, their life, their experiences. We go to them and we ask them about that. What did you do when this happened? How did the community make it through that particular time? What were the challenges? What were the decisions? How did you do that? And so we learn from that, because life has a way of repeating itself, especially if you don't get it right the first time. It seems to come back again. So our elders are ones who hold that experience, that knowledge. Now, the word elders, the name elders, isn't our word. It's an English word. That's actually a church word. My dad said we had a word, and every community and every nation had their own words to describe those ones who we went to for guidance. And he said, I can't remember how he pronounced the word, but what it meant was one who knows. Go to that, that name, that one who knows. And he said it didn't necessarily mean they were older, because we all know younger people who are just gifted in a particular area. And they would be considered an elder or one who knows, because that's who people go to learn about what they know. They seem to just have that gift of knowledge in that particular area. There's a few younger people that I know that I consider my teachers that are much younger than me, but they just knowledgeable in an area is just incredible. So our elders, our men, our women who have lived those lives are often looked to. And being an elder is not something you decide in terms of that, the one who knows. The people decide. They decided by coming to you, by reaching out to you, by asking you to help them. If they don't come to you, then you never get into that particular, you might be an older person that has some knowledge, but you're not that particular elder who a lot of people go to for particular things. And so it's important to know that as well. So they have lived their life, they've experienced things, their successes, and I use the word failure in here, but I'm going to take that out because it's not really a failure if you do something and you learn from it. It's part of the learning process. You have a question? or a hand up.
Yes, Brenda asks, how do we get our elders to record their wisdom, either on video or voice recording? We are losing so much right now. What is your view on the internet and elders? Is another question.
Well, I do use Elder Google from time to time, but it is a balancing act. And, just a little story here. A few years back, just a few years ago, was no internet or anything, but there is that sort of that struggle that traditional people have around recording. And a friend of mine, he's passed away now. He's a chief of the Medewan Lodge, Grand Chief. He had written a book called the Mishomis Book. And the Mishomis Book became popular. Now, in the Mishomis Book, there's basic teachings. It's not like really thick. It's a thin book. It has some really good stuff in it. It gives you just a taste of some of the teachings. But he got into a lot of flack for doing that amongst some of his peers and some of the culture police that didn't like the idea of sharing teachings in that form. That orally is the way to do it. You're supposed to do it in ceremony. Only, you do it to those who are there. There's a process for it. And he understood that. But he also knew that the times were changing and that we were losing a lot of people, a lot of our teachers, and those teachings were going with him. So he looked at the book as a tool. And he created that book, and he took some flack, but after a while, people began to understand why he did that. Didn't mean he stopped going into the lodges and doing oral history. Yes, he continued that, but he had to reach out in other ways to reach people, to give them that, because maybe that then would bring them to the lodge, bring them to ceremonies, because books can only give you so much. They touch the surface, but experiential learning is really the key to traditional knowledge. You can read about a sweat lodge, but until you go into one or go to one and you help around one, you don't really know. You may have the intellect about it, what happens in it and what's done, but until you experience it, you don't really know. So he used that as a tool. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, we didn't have the axe before. We didn't have guns before. But we brought those in to use them in a good way, to use the axe to help create a fire for a sweat lodge, chop the wood and that, do those tasks around. So even though it's not traditional, in the sense that came from us, it still helped us. And we used it in a way that would help us. So when it comes to, platforms like Zoom and Teams and all these, there's certain things you can do. It doesn't, it's not the same as experiencing it face to face, but it is a tool. It does help. It helps reach out to other people. So for me, and I'm just speaking for myself, I like to use it when there's no other way to do this, like we're doing here. I would prefer you be in my lodge here with me and I'm sharing, but sometimes that just can't happen. And one of my teachers used to, I went to him with a problem, and I thought he was going to tell me exactly what to do. And all he told me was find a way. And I was so frustrated with that answer. And that's not an answer. And then I thought about, well, I guess it is an answer, because he's not saying I can't do it. He's telling me there's an answer, but I got to find it. And I did. I thought about it. I figured it out. So if there was no answer, he would have said, you can't do anything. It's done. But he didn't say that. So when you look for answers, sometimes they might tell you a story, or, and you might think, what the heck was that story about, but you look at that story and you listen, you sit with it, and something will help you. Something in it will. So we come from a world, we want instant gratification, we want instant fixing, but there's a journey. Traditionally, there's a journey into it to find the answer, to find what you're looking for. It's not always that easy, because if it was, what would be the point? It's what you learn along the way, not the destination. So I see a hand up. There's another question.
Harry, Brenda says she's thankful for you being here in the virtual platform, I believe is what she means. The thought of in-person learning excludes those who do not live there. So she's happy to be able to come in this space. And
that's awesome. And you know, there are some who do not do these, you know, some teachers, knowledge keepers, and that's fine. It's for them to walk with what they learn, their knowledge in their way. But some of us are a little more, I'm going to use the word liberal. Hope nobody throws stones at me. But I'm a little more that way, where I figure there's got to be a way we can do this, and it's okay. And your intentions are important. That's the main part. What are your intentions in doing the things you're doing? If they're good intentions, hey, Guillaume Nadeau is very forgiving. You're going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, Michelle also had her hand up. So Michelle, I have allowed you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Thank you, Jessica McLeod. Yes, I just wanted to comment on some of the digital platforms that people are using to learn, and that, you know, the books that are being shared. And I do understand the significance and importance it is for many elders that this knowledge is to be shared traditionally in ceremony and such. However, yes, as you're saying, Perry, it's so imperative because, you know, there's so many Indigenous youth, you know, myself with my 4 kids that live in an urban setting, that we are removed from a lot of those teachings, and especially because of, you know, residential schools and history that has torn us away from so many of that teaching, that we need to reclaim that. And I think that it's a tool to be able to recognize and reintegrate that into our lives and into our being, because that blood memory is always there. So I'm miigwech for this, and I think it's just really important to use that as tools as well. And so I've really taken pleasure, especially during the pandemic, of being able to take time to participate in forums like this and do learning.
Yeah, it taught us, you know, this experience of COVID taught us some things. I've learned how to use Zoom and and Teams and you know, all these other platforms, and so that's now become a tool that I can use when I need to. I prefer face-to-face, and of course now things are opening up more, which is great. But there's always this now, so that experience allowed me to learn more. So I'm more comfortable with it now. Whereas before I was like, oh, I don't know how that works, you know. But now I do, not, you know, 100%, but you know, I'm up there. I can kind of make my way through, so it's all good.
I do have one more question here, Perry, from Matthew. He asks, as a man, how can I use my gift as an artist to harness more of the power in a good way? I am overwhelmed with the platforms given to me and ability to share my story that others may use as the resilience.
Geez, that's a hard question, you know. I can only speak for myself, I guess, and each of us are different, you know, even as men. So you got to find yourself what works, you know, for you, and balance it. It's all about balance, you know. What's your balance with that question? I can't really answer it for you. That's something you got to sort of do and experience and figure it out. It's an important question for a lot of us, you know, not only as men, as, you know, as women, as human beings, is that kind of a question. So it's not directly a man's question or a men's question, but I see, you know, what you're saying. And, you know, when we look at these platforms and things, what is igniting it? What is giving this the energy to do these? It's fire. It's the fire that flows through our electronics and in our phones, that energy, that spark, which is something that is directly related to men and our teachings. So there's so many different kinds of fire. There's a campfire, there's a sacred fire, there's a fire from our thunders, from the thunder beings that come, fire from our grandfather, fire of life that's within us. You know, there's fire in water. There's so many kinds of fires. But we are connected as men, given that responsibility for each of those. So we were given the instruction to have a relationship, not all men have. So when it comes to platforms and things, for men and even that artistic fire that you speak of, that I also have. I'm an artist myself, and it's what feeds that fire. If I feel okay about it, then I'm good with it. But if I'm doing something or that I don't feel right about it, then I just don't. I pull back. So that's something you're going to have to find, that balance. If it works for you, if it doesn't work for you, if sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, it's going to vary. So I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question directly, but it's such a hard question to answer. It's one that I really can't. I can maybe guide you to sort of figure it out, but it's a question you're going to have to answer. Figure that out through your experiences. I hope that's okay. Is there anything else?
Just a thank you from Elaine for being able to come to this platform to learn from you. She's listening in from News Factory. But yeah, we do have a couple more minutes here, so I just want to make sure you get the opportunity to finish up your thoughts.
Let me finish this up, and then we could wrap it up there for two. Our women, our life givers. I spoke of that earlier. They are the first teachers, the first nurturers of our children. When our children come through that doorway, that eastern door, the physical vessel of our women. They are the first teachers. Men are the second, and the protectors. We again protect that fire of life that our women carry, especially when that baby is coming. Our children, they're beautiful. They're gifts. They're a reflection of ourselves. They are a do-over for us. When we have our kids, we always think about making their lives better. We see ourselves in them, a reflection of ourselves in them. But also the things we do now, we're leaving for them. And, we're leaving quite a bit of work for our kids there right now, the way the world is going. Our work today is for the seventh generation, like those generations ahead. That's how we need to think. When we do something today, how's that going to affect generations ahead? What have we learned from 7 generations before? Are we on that same straight path or right path? Our men, firekeepers, for our family, for our communities, for our nations. When it comes to lighting fire, I do fire teaching workshops with a striker and a flint. And I open that up to men and women. But the sacred fire, those teachings are the responsibility of men, but sometimes men are not around to do it. So the women have to do it too. So they need that skill. They need some of that understanding in order to light that fire. The sacred fire needs to be lit. Somebody's got to light it. And if the men aren't around or a man isn't around, then the women will have to step up to do it. So it is a men's role and responsibility, but they're not always there to do it. So our men must use their fires to protect our women and children, and to teach our young men how to be good men. And our women will remind us about this. They do. My wife does all the time. So I'm gonna stop it here because we only have a couple of minutes. Just to wrap things up, thank you for allowing me in. I don't know if there's a question or two that I can quickly handle.
Sorry about that. We have many thank yous to McLeod. Donald says he'd love to receive a copy of the session, and we have recorded and we will send it around. Donald says, as a man around others who identify as a man, I welcome our journey as on my own health and wellness journey. Michelle says, with many broken families, many of us benefit from these teachings to teach and guide our own sons and pave a healthy journey for them. Yeah, I think, do you have any final reflections of how all this relates to men's wellness in the grand scheme of things?
I guess one thing comes to mind is, there are many fires within us as human beings, but as men in particular. And there are those fires are, anger, fires of happiness, joy, fires of sadness, fires of laughter, humor. So all these different things we each have. But for men, I always emphasize, feed that good fire. The anger is a needed fire that we have, but we have to keep it in balance. We can't let any of those fires overcome us. And for men, I think, some of those fires have taken over and we've fed it too much by, neglect or even intentionally feeding those fires. And so it's about getting a hold of all the fires inside you and balancing them, because we need all of them. Sadness, happiness, anger, all of them. But we need to keep them as much in balance as we can. So find those things that help you feed those fires in a healthy way, to maintain those fires, to tend to those fires. Don't overfeed any of them. Try to balance that. Try to be aware of your fires and feed them in a healthy way. That's what I'm thinking about. There's lots of things I could say, but that's comes to mind.